one of the real challenges for the administration in creating a framework for diplomacy is going to be creating a set of guidelines and deadlines that are mutually agreed upon, as well as potential concessions and incentives that are also mutually agreed upon, because ultimately there's very little we can offer to the Iranians in advance of them taking concrete steps to change their policies, in advance of a suspension of uranium enrichment, or in advance of any real meaningful and clear change in their policy on terrorism and intervention in some of their neighbors. But we need to make clear what the rewards for that kind of behavior will be, to keep them at the negotiating table, to give them the incentive to do what we need them to do. And we need to also make clear what the penalties for stalling at the negotiating table will be. I think the other set of challenges revolve around the whole question of whether or not Iran can say yes to any deal. And this is the great unknown of any kind of U.S.-Iranian diplomacy. We do know, as I said, that the Iranians can sit across the table from American diplomats, as they did between 2001 and 2003, and actually engage in a constructive dialogue. They were not perfect talks. The participants will complain, I think, on both sides of the frustrating experience that they had. But they did produce some positive outcome with respect to the establishment of what was, at least at the outset, a stable Afghan government and a political process that was at least viable in the aftermath of the chaos and violence of the overthrow of the Taliban. And so we know that the Iranians are capable, at least on discrete issues, of having some capacity to sit at a negotiating table with Americans and make progress and show results. And we know, of course, from looking at their relationships with other countries, particularly with Saudi Arabia, with the British, that Iran can, in fact, come to terms with old adversaries. We know that Iranian policy on a number of areas, foreign policy and domestic policy, has changed in dramatic ways over the past 30 years. But what we don't know is whether Iran is capable of making the sort of epic concessions on terrorism, on its nuclear program, even conceivably on the way it treats its own people. We don't know if Iran is capable of making those concessions that would be necessary to arrive at any real change in the U.S.-Iranian relationship. And we don't know if the Iranians have the kind of internal policy coordination to carry out any promised changes to their own policy. So I think that is one of the major challenges, and it's the one unknown that needs to be addressed only by testing.